We are on to the last in the series of lectures. It is lecture 20 about Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. And here we'll discuss some examples of virtue as well as offer conclusions that strive to bring everything together very quickly. Aristotle takes it that there are basic things that we must do: interact with others, work, engage in leisure, be with our family, undergo death, experience good things and bad things in general. And how we respond to them is what determines whether we are happy or not. We can respond with virtue and be happy, or not. To respond with virtue is not to be at the mercy of our feelings, but rather to be guided by knowledge and calculating rational thinking. But to respond with virtue in this way, we must have a character that is amenable to be guided by reason in this way. What sort of character we have depends on our desire. If desire is excessive or deficient, we do not listen to reason, but simply respond passively without self-determination by means of our feelings. That life is full of conflict and difficulties in the soul. If desire is at the mean, on the other hand, the soul is guided by reason, and all of the parts of the soul work in harmony. And that is a good and happy human being, according to the nature of rational humanity that human beings are. I take it that we can say that as a kind of a conclusion, as a kind of a sum up of what Aristotle is trying to communicate. Looking at the examples of virtue, here are some that Aristotle discusses. With regard to anger, there is the mean, righteousness. There's also the excess, irritability, and there's also the deficiency, which is apathy. Interesting enough, just as we must pay attention to pleasure and not completely get rid of it in our lives due to its possible harm, we must also have anger in order for us to respond properly to what is around us. But not too much anger, not too little anger, toward the right things, toward the right people, at the right time, in the right place, and so on. With regard to giving and spending money, there is the mean, which we can call generosity, and that's the virtue. There's also the excess, which we can call ostentatiousness, gaudiness, wastefulness, and there is the deficiency, which is stinginess. A happy person of virtue is generous in this sense. With regard to friendliness, there is the mean, which is friendliness. Then there is the excess, which is sycophancy. And then there is the deficiency, which is unfriendliness. Um, you know, we can be friendly, or we can be on the side of kissing up, or we can be on the side of just being unfriendly. The virtue is the mean, which is friendliness. But of course, whether one strikes the mean here or not depends on how one's desire is in general, as it is constituted by all of the actions in all of the other spheres in our lives. With regard to telling the truth about oneself, there is the mean. We don't quite have a name for it. There is the excess, which is bragging. And then there is the deficiency, which is self-deprecation. Happy person aims at the virtue and the mean by aiming at the in-between of the extremes. We can say by our conclusion about Aristotle. The soul in such a person works as it should, guided by reason, according to nature, and that is happiness. At this point, we can revisit the question we raised at the end of our introduction to Aristotle. Is happiness a product of our activities, as for example, winning a game is a product of playing the game, or is happiness a way of performing our activities, as for example, a certain way of playing a game with grace or beauty? Since Aristotle argues that happiness we aim to achieve is constant, we don't aim at unconstant happiness. Aristotle's answer seems to be the latter. Happiness is not a product of anything that we do that comes after the action is done, but is something that happens throughout the action. That would be a certain way of doing the action rather than the product of it that comes after the action is done. Human soul, guided by reason, is the same kind of a beauty and makes one happy in the way that performing actions of any activity with grace and beauty according to nature of that activity is the right and beautiful thing to do. Even if, for reasons beyond our control, these actions turn out worse than they should have, according to our intentions.